Okay, everybody, can I have your attention, please? Noisy people over there? Yeah, you guys. Yes, sir. Yes. There's some sign-in sheets going around. If you want to comment, you don't have to sign in. What I'll do is I'll go down the list of names, I'll comment on the sign-in sheets and call those people first. And okay, my name is Joe Griffin. I'm with the DNR, and what we're here to do this evening is to solicit comments from the public on our proposed changes to the topsoil preservation requirements in the stormwater general permit. We're not really here to explain the rule or to engage in debate. We just want people's comments. However, what I will do is take a few minutes to give a little history on this and to tell everyone what the current requirements are and what the proposal is. That way people can make informed comments. Currently, what we have is for most construction sites that need stormwater permits, which is those that disturb an acre or more, they have to preserve 4 inches of topsoil on the surface if there's 4 inches or more there. If they want to preserve 5 or 6 or 8, that's good too. They need 4 inches or more if there was 4 inches or more to begin with. If there wasn't any before construction started, then they don't need to have any on the surface. If there was 2 feet, then all they need is 4 inches. Back around, I think it was 2009, EPA came up with a topsoil preservation requirement in the Code of Federal Regulations. And the DNR was obliged to adopt that or something similar. The language was basically preserve topsoil unless infeasible. And in consultation with our stakeholders as builders, developers, construction folks, most of us, or at least most who gave us input, were pretty much agreed that preserve topsoil unless infeasible by itself maybe wasn't really workable, because what's preserved topsoil? What's preserved topsoil in one city may not be preservation of topsoil in another. What's preservation of topsoil for one inspector may not be that to another. So between us all, after a few months of going back and forth, we came up with what's now known as the 4-inch requirement, or the 4-inch rule. That became effective in Iowa on October 1st, 2012. And then about the summer maybe of 2013, the development community approached the department and said, well, we way underestimated the cost of this. This we don't believe is economically feasible. And as a result, we set up another stakeholder group about the winter of 2013-2014. And there were several members of it, some from the development community, some from, say, landscaping or soil conservation people. And they were tasked with coming up with perhaps some other recommendation. And then in around May or so, May or June of 2014, they came up with a majority consensus on what they wanted instead of the current 4-inch requirement. That was presented to the Environmental Protection Commission, who then, back in September, voted to direct the department to replace to begin the rulemaking process to replace the 4-inch topsoil requirement, which is what we have currently, with the recommendation of the EO80 stakeholder group. They very slightly changed some of the wording in the proposal from the stakeholder group that the commission did. They directed us to do rulemaking based upon that slight change. Then in January, we presented to the Environmental Protection Commission proposal for a rule for information that contained the proposals plus their the slight changes that the commission had told us to put in place. And in that after that January meeting, then we have the public comment period, which runs until April 1st. And this is the first of 3 public hearings we're going to be having to solicit comments from the public. Now, y'all can also send comments to us via email if you want. What the department's going to do with all these comments is we're going to write what we call a responsiveness summary. Now, that's not going to contain every single comment we get, because a lot of the comments, a lot of them are basically the same thing. They're on similar themes, either for it or against it. So that's why it's a responsiveness summary. We're going to write up these comments. There may be comments that are unique, and those will be addressed too. We'll write up those comments or those groups of comments, and then our responses to them. And those will eventually be put on our website. They'll also be presented to the Environmental Protection Commission for their consideration, because they haven't adopted this yet. They want to get comments from stakeholders, from interested members of the public on what they think of this, and if they want any changes to what the proposal is. Like I said, this is the first public hearing. We've had a public comment period for a few weeks now. It'll run till April 1st. So even if you don't comment this evening, you can send me an email, and that's on lots of different places. Just in case you don't have it, I'll spell out for you. My email address is joe.griffin, and the surname is spelled Griffin, and then at dnr.iowa.gov. So if you don't want to comment tonight and you think of a comment, or maybe you've already commented, if you want to comment again on a different, maybe a different part of this topic, feel free, as long as it's a different comment. And we'll get that, and we'll send a responsiveness summary out to everyone who sends in germane comments. Also, if you sign the sign-up sheet and you give me your email address, we'll send it out to the folks on that too. Now, are there still sign-up sheets floating around? So if you want to sign up and you haven't yet, raise your hand. Anybody? The gentleman back there. And after everyone speaks, who's signed up, if they still want to speak. Thanks. Then then anyone who wants to make a comment, you can be anonymous. That's fine. If you want to email me later to get a copy of the responsiveness summary, that's okay too. So we'll start out with Wally Taylor.
Stand right here.
Yeah, this is on. We got a couple of recording devices up here, and we have a couple of speakers for the phone for folks who call in. Maybe it would be best if you want, if those making comments could stand up here. If you're shy, go ahead and give a comment in the back room if you want. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Wally Taylor. I'm the chair of the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club. And the first point I want to make is that the process that led to this proposed rule was extremely flawed. The stakeholder group that was formed to advise the Environmental Protection Commission was packed with home builders, and there were only two people on the group that were not home builders, and I'll guarantee you that none of the environmental community was invited to join the stakeholders group. The stakeholders group met in secret, except they had one public meeting at the end when they'd already made their decision. The whole process should have been open and transparent. So at this point, the rule should be sent back, start from scratch, appoint a fair and balanced stakeholders group to advise the EPC. The second point is that in support of this proposed rule, if the home builders say it's too expensive to put topsoil back, let them come up with facts and figures to justify that. I have not seen any. How expensive is it if you've kept the topsoil there to just push it back on? And it can be added to the cost of the home. You know, you're paying $100,000 or whatever it is for a home. A couple thousand more dollars isn't going to make that much difference. Finally, the home builders have made it clear from asking for this new rule and giving them carte blanche to do whatever they want or not do anything as far as putting topsoil back. They should, they've made it clear that they don't intend to put any topsoil back, or the very minimum, and that's not fair to the homeowners who are going to get stuck with a lawn that can't grow any sod, that the chemicals wash off into the stormwater. That's the problem with not having enough topsoil. And home builders have made it clear that they're not going to do what needs to be done to protect the homeowners. So this rule needs to be scrapped. Stick with the 4-inch topsoil rule that we had.
Okay, next is Brad Friedhoff.
My name is Brad Friedhoff. I've been an Iowan my entire life. I grew up on a small farm in northeast Iowa. I work in conservation today, dealing with our natural landscape. I'm living the issue that we're talking about. I live in Corville, right north of Interstate 80, with a site. When I purchased it, I did some inspection, but every site around there was the exact same way. I have a yard that is pure clay with a thin layer of sod sealed over the top of it. To grow any type of trees or vegetables, I have to amend my yard. And on the one side, because of the drainage of my neighboring houses, my sod is eroded away or been undercut. It's a very thin layer of sod. And I have a large gully forming on the one side of my house. So I've had to take that cost and physically repair that because of the poor design of my landscape. I like the current rule. I think if there isn't any topsoil there, that's fine. You don't have to replace any. If there are 4 inches of topsoil, I think that should be maintained. What becomes of the topsoil then if it is removed? Is it sold at a cost? Is that coming back to the homeowners? In my case, I don't believe it happened. So I would like to see those costs either, if it is costing that much, pass it on to the homeowners. That's what's going to happen anyway if it occurs. So I'd like to see those, to give those owners, if I went out to a farmer and told them I'm going to sell you this farm, but I'm going to take the 4 inches of topsoil off first and sell that. A farmer would probably say, well, that's going to reduce the cost value of my property. Same thing with my home. I think it reduced the property value of my property. I'd like to see that topsoil remain on site.
Next is Pam Mackey-Taylor.
I'm Pam Mackey-Taylor from Marion. I agree with the previous two speakers. First, the process was flawed, and I agree that we need to start over with a new stakeholders group that is fair, balanced, and open to the public. It's very clear in the rule that the definition of infeasible hasn't been very well defined. And infeasible shouldn't be, it just costs too much to return the topsoil. There needs to be a clear definition of what infeasible is, and there needs to be a way that the homeowner, the home buyer, can come back and have some relief if the topsoil isn't returned. Bear in mind that these home builders are putting fancy options into homes like granite countertops and bump outs and screened-in porches, so topsoil can be returned to the property. Landowners who purchase the homes certainly expect to have lots with topsoil on them and don't expect to have sod laid on a compacted base. The costs to return topsoil need to be very explicitly stated in this rule and very clearly delineated against what it costs a homeowner to retrofit topsoil once the lot is purchased. And that balance needs to be used to establish whether or not the rule should be left as it is or should be modified. We believe that it costs much more to return the topsoil after the sod's laid. By the time you have to rip up topsoil, put ripped up sod, return topsoil, spend time, labor, effort, rent equipment to do that. So we believe it's much cheaper to return the topsoil at the time the house is built. The topsoil is important because it holds water, it helps reduce flood risk, it holds fertilizer, and allows gardens, trees, flowers, and all the kinds of things that homeowners expect when they're buying a yard. All of us have a responsibility of reducing the nitrates in stormwater, and that includes home builders, it includes farmers, and it includes other landowners. So this is an important piece of the nitrate removal process and nitrate reductions. We expect home builders to return the topsoil and not cut corners, and we believe this rule would allow corners to be cut if topsoil doesn't have to be returned.
Randy Dostal.
Randy Dostal, owner of Thomas Dostal Developers and Cedar Rapids Home Builders Association president for 2015. I've heard some very poignant comments from the people before me. I'd like to look at a few different situations. One, the current language as we see it.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Yep, current language as we see it. Where will the product come from? I know what we do personally in our company. We strip the land of all the topsoil. We put it in a stockpile. We hold it until the lot's ready for sodding, and then we bring in the black dirt and spread it all over the lot. We don't sell the black dirt. We don't get rid of it off-site. We use what we can use, and then what happens is it goes back on the lots. Number two, how and when will measurement come from? Is it going to be a municipality? Is it going to be an outside source? It's going to measure this 4 inches, and is the 4 inches measured as we put it on or after compaction? What is the cost? What is the cost of hauling? What is the cost of the dirt itself, and where are we going to get this dirt? Example, if a lot doesn't have dirt, where do we get it, and can we pass it on to the consumer and still make it affordable? Measurement. Again, who's measuring it, and what's the cost of the measurement? Is it engineers? Is it city staff that is already overloaded in some areas and we have to wait for them to get them out for inspections? Or is this going to be another inspection process that's going to hold up a closing where our stakeholders want to get in their houses? 4, why 4 inches? What's the magic of 4 inches? Grass grows in a lot of different areas, and down in Florida as an example, it's all sand. So it grows very easily. What's the magic of the 4-inch rule? Ban all chemicals. If we're going to go to something that's going to help our environment, ban the chemicals that are used in the process of growing grass. The dead zone in the Gulf wasn't created by developers. It was the farm industry for the most part. So ban all the chemicals. If we're going to go to the 4-inch rule, let's be equitable. That will help solve your problem with runoff, your nitrogen buildup in the Gulf as an example. And the homeowners, they have a responsibility to stop using these chemicals. Right now, our costs have gone up 12% this year. There's only so much you can pass on to the consumer, and only so much that they will afford through the lending practices that are currently involved. They might want to pay it, they might not be able to. Our costs have gone up 12% this year across the board. Siding shingles have gone up 8%. As an example, but the barrel of oil has gone down by 50%. The companies aren't absorbing or passing on the savings. They're making what they make, just like we have to make in the industry what we make without hurting the environment. Overall, we propose current language because the change adversely affects affordability of housing. This is why we, as an industry, are against this. Thank you.
Martin Smith.
The proposed replacement of the rule regarding replacement of topsoil on developed sites would allow new developments in urban and suburban areas to become greater contributors to worsening the problem of nutrients leaching from soils into our streams. Furthermore, the rule is a step backward, away from good stormwater management, likely depriving home buyers of fair value, and contributing to a reputation of Iowa that is both unflattering and economically harmful. When landowners find their property has only a sod layer on top of compacted subsoil, or worse, grass seeded into bare subsoil, they will likely respond by trying to get a better crop of grass. They'll go out and buy fertilizer, or they'll go hire a lawn care firm, and the lawn care firm will add the fertilizer. With no depth of topsoil, this will lead to nutrients having nothing to hold them and likely leaching off. Replacing the topsoil will allow the soil to hold the nutrients and to hold storm water, which will delay this runoff or slow the runoff, further reducing the leaching of fertilizers. While development takes place on only a small fraction of Iowa land, and farming is still the biggest contributor, of course, to nutrients going into our streams, how can we ask farmers to make a nutrient reduction strategy work if in our cities and towns we're going in the opposite direction? The rule that has been in place for over 2 years provides a measurable standard. New developments under the existing rule supply some slowing of the stormwater flows, which helps the cities and towns to more easily manage the stormwater flows and to use existing water courses, and without having to enlarge them, to build storm sewers with more easily designed for capacity and lower costs. Weakening the rule has a potential to add costs to the cities and towns for stormwater management, a burden unfairly transferred from the new developments to existing residents and businesses. Adopting this proposed rule opposes the goals of the nutrient reduction strategy, transfers stormwater management costs from new developments to existing residents and businesses, and allows development where new residents will feel cheated and will incur unplanned for costs in attempting to remedy their situation. To defend both the reputation of Iowa, I must oppose this rule, and I urge the Environmental Protection Commission to reject this change.
And this reminds me, I forgot to mention this, if you have written comments, you can go ahead and give them to me now or at the end of the meeting, whenever you wish. Okay, Carol Teeter.
I'm Carol Teeter, and I'm a member of the Stormwater Commission here in Cedar Rapids, and I'm also a representative of Trees Forever, which is an organization based in Marion. I did submit email comments, and many of them were very similar to what we heard earlier, so I won't go over those and repeat those, but I will summarize by saying soil is essential to keeping rain when it falls on site. We are a community that had catastrophic flooding just 7 short years ago. If anything, we should get that. We should understand the importance of capturing the rain where it falls so it doesn't wash downstream and flood people downstream, whether that's downstream in another neighborhood in our city or downstream to another city. The soil also is important to growing the trees, shrubs, native plants. I especially say native plants on that because those plants will also help absorb rain, will reduce erosion, will support pollinators, will lead to healthier children, healthier residents, mentally and physically healthier. They increase the home value. There are many benefits to the home buyers and the residents and the community as a whole. And for that reason, I support the originally worded rule, the 4-inch rule, and I would assert that that was arrived at, and we heard this from Joe too, from multiple stakeholders who had input early on. And as we've heard already, the second group of people who came together didn't represent that diversity. And I would just respect the first rule and keep it as it was, 4 inches. Thank you.
Norm and Joyce Humble.
Yes, Norm. have about a 60-minute presentation. I'm opposed to it. And I'd like to speak to it from the standpoint of an established neighborhood. We live in an established neighborhood, and for 22 years we had no water in our basement until a developer, and I guess I'll use the name because it was used in the newspaper, Jerry's Homes began to develop behind us on a hill, and they began to grade, and we got water. 6 of us got water. There's a hill to the north of us, a hill to the west of us, and a hill to the south of us. But those hills were there, we've been there for 25 years with no water until this past spring. And it was runoff water that took us. And it was sewer water. It went into to the storm sewer, and it breached the storm. It breached the sewer system, and so that's what we took. And there was no topsoil. They had done their grading. They'd taken the topsoil. Now after it all happened, they put berms up and this sort of thing, but we still got water when we got rain. The next question is the storm sewers large enough to hold the water that's going to run off that the builders are going to use with no topsoil? Our city storm sewers, not just in Cedar Rapids, but across the state, are they large enough to handle the runoff that's going to happen? It's going to happen. The ag industry is highly regulated. So I think that's a whole different issue, and that was brought up about the ag. Also, I want to remind us all, we live in Iowa, not Florida. And then I guess I have a question. Oh, I checked. It's $20. I can buy black dirt for $20 per ton. My problem is I don't know how many tons need to go on a lot. So it depends upon the size of the lot. Depends upon a whole bunch of things, I guess. But at least in Cedar Rapids, it's $20 a ton for black dirt. And then my question, another question, and my last question, and then I'll sit down, is if I own the land, the lot, and I bought the lot, and I contract with a builder to build a home, who owns the dirt? I own the dirt, I paid for the land. The contractor doesn't own that dirt, I do. And if there's any dirt left over, it should be put back on my property. And any dirt left over after that, the contractor should get his checkbook out and write me a check and buy the dirt from me. It's not a gift. Thank you.
Next, Drew Retz.
Well, I'm one of these awful builders and developers, and a few of the things that you need to know is that the standards have changed significantly over the years. Today, when we develop a subdivision, you have to address stormwater quality, stormwater volumes, all those items, and the soil is part of that calculation. And that does not mean that it needs to be spread 4 inches consistently to accomplish that, but it's maintained on the site in those design calculations that we pay professional engineers to accomplish and deal with. Also, a lot of people think that topsoil is potting soil for $20 a ton. That's a pretty good buy. Let's see you get it there though, because it's pretty hard to get it there for less than $60 a load or better. And that's paying on top of the dirt. So topsoil is not potting soil, but it is the soil that existed on site before development that is there by definition. And I work on a lot of sites where it was pretty much pure sand. So I could put back in there the way the rule says, but it still isn't going to accomplish what the desire was and what the intent of the EPA language was. And that is what we all have to address as builders and developers now with our stormwater quality designs that we have to put in and have submitted and approved before we can build them and use them. One of the things that I think is also a misconception is the cost of doing this is not at the expense of the builder or the developer, because we bring no money to the table. It is the buyer of the product pays for everything. It doesn't matter whether you're buying a Nike shoe and you choose to support the multi-bazillion-dollar athletes that hawk for that, or whether you're talking about topsoil. And as a builder, I'm more than willing to haul in as much topsoil as you want to pay for. But the real problem comes in housing affordability. Because every time you raise the cost of a house of $1,000, the U.S. Census Bureau and the National Association of Home Builders have calculated that you remove 3,126 families from being able to afford that home. A comment earlier was, well, you know, they're paying $100,000, another $1,000 shouldn't be that big a deal. Well, it is when they don't qualify for the loan now at $101,000 or $103,000 to qualify for it. So it is a big deal. It affects Habitat for Humanity homes as well as any other affordability homes that are being done, and most of those today are being done at your expense as a taxpayer, and so you're paying twice for that as well. And then I also heard tonight, you know, where's the relief for the buyer, you know, that bought a home that doesn't have 4 inches. So as a previous gentleman mentioned, who's measuring it? Where are they measuring it? When are we relieved of liability of having 4 inches of topsoil on the site? Topsoil is not like concrete. When I pour 4 inches of concrete, it stays 4 inches of concrete. When I put down 4 inches of topsoil, it can be compacted, it can be shifted, it can be changed, it can be moved a little bit, it can be eroded, as another gentleman explained. So at what point in time are we relieved of liability of 4 inches? I support the rule change, not because I'm against what the intent was, but because we need to talk about affordability, who's paying for it, and as home buyers and homeowners, you can have whatever you want, and you'll have what you want if you go and work with a reputable builder that's already doing a lot of these things incorporated in their price. If you want to go just for the dollar, which most buyers in the market today, doesn't matter whether you're buying a home or whether you're buying shoes, everybody's buying on price. And so that's where the real rub is. The buyer pays for it. So you want to make a rule that affects everybody. Iowa is also a home rule state. So if Iowa City and Coralville want to make a 6-inch rule or 12-inch rule, they can affect their housing affordability all they want in their market. I don't think it's a state's position to say that everybody and every piece of land in the entire state is the same and needs to be treated the same.
Bob Oakley.
I kind of come unprepared tonight. It was kind of a last minute thing, but I do feel very deeply about this. Having direct experience living downstream of the watershed from development. The City Planning Commission seems to have kind of lost its way in some areas as far as allowing developments and what they have put in for requirements for the developments. I think that some of the developers have lost their stewardships of the land and look at the land more as a dollar than as the value of the land. When they put up a roof on a house, you're making more surface area for drain off than what was originally there to begin with. Not only that, but you add inertia to the water because now you're taking it and running it down a downspout. See, now you've got a stream of water running. You put it onto a hard surface of the street, and now you've got water and volume running with force, as opposed to running off on dirt and absorbing into the dirt. Personally, I think 6 inches is what we need. 4 inches is okay. It works. But I think the developers just need to be a little bit more conscious of the stewardships of the land and be aware of what they're causing downstream of the watershed. And I realize that you guys spend a lot of money and a lot of time. You've got a lot invested in it. It's your livelihood. I appreciate that. Everybody has to do something. But with the number of people that we have coming into the area, the expansion and the growth, we're being forced out into the rural areas to be developed. And then lands were not traditionally had housing on them. They were not traditionally, the land has not formed over the years and in its drainage and its composition to have housing on it. to have structures built on it. And when you build structures on it, create more runoff, and don't control the runoff, then you're creating problems for people down the water stream ship. The city of Cedar Rapids and the taxpayers, all you have to do is look at what's going on over on E Avenue Northwest. And they told them that after '93 that would never happen again. And you got people over there that lost houses here just last year, the year before. So I just would wish that people would be a little bit more conscious of the environment, be a little bit better stewards of the land, and realize that we have to change the way that we do things. We have more people, we have more resources that we're using up, and we just have to think about that and try to do a little better job.
Lisa Paulos.
Lisa Paulo, Cedar Rapids. I believe there's just one question to ask that will help solve this issue, and that's what's best for the planet. Because what's best for the planet is best for what the people who live on the planet. I see this as not about individual stakeholders. I see this as doing what's best for all the people and animals that are trying to make a life here on the planet. And with respect to the gentleman who spoke, two people before me, the builder in the back who's writing, not everyone buys on price alone. There are people who are willing to pay for quality. They might not be seeking you out, but we are there on the planet, not buying on price alone. There are people who want more and will pay for more.
Laura, K-R-O-V-S-E. Not a V.
So I'm Laura Kraus, and I'm the chair of the Lynn Soil and Water Conservation District. And there are 5 commissioners in the district. If you live in Lynn County, you elected us. And our job is to work on natural resource issues in the county, particularly soil conservation and water quality issues. And we definitely like the rule the way it is. We do not want it changed. We would like more topsoil, in fact, because when you expose subsoil, you create a relatively less permeable surface. And so we make, by putting houses and driveways and streets, we make landscapes that are more slick. By not having permeable surfaces in the area where the lawn is, or less permeable surfaces in the lawn, cause more runoff, more flooding, more water quality problems, more soil erosion problems. So we would like to see the topsoil that's on the site remain on the site. Soil and water commissioners don't generally get involved in these kind of issues, so we are not as well prepared on this issue as we are on other things, but I think we definitely agree that the rule the way it stands is better than the rule that's suggested.
Rick Niemeyer.
My name is Rick Niemeyer. Just want to make sure the Sierra Club is not carrying tonight, are they? I am a retired golf course superintendent for 22 years, licensed pesticide applicator for 22 years. I've worked on many projects. I'm sorry, I've worked on many projects and helped build many golf holes, done a lot of landscape projects. I've grown turf grass and all types of soils, good and bad. Somebody asked about where they come up with the 4 inches of topsoil. That's a minimum requirement for going turf grass. Anything less than that, you're not going to have very good turf grass. As everybody has mentioned, good topsoil will hold nutrients, water, keep water from running off. Good topsoil can be re-wetted easily. Try re-wetting clay. I don't know how many of you have seen the builders that bulldoze off all the black dirt, leave clay, come out, build a house, throw down some sod, run a steamroller over it, and call it good. Works out beautiful for about a month, and then the homeowner has to deal with it. I can guarantee you if this 4-inch requirement is overturned, that contractors will be doing that all the time. Then it's left to the homeowner that has to deal with it for the rest of the life of the house. There ain't much that they can do other than tearing it all out and starting all over. And it's cheaper to do it before, when you're building the house, than it is to do it after. There were some people that talked about the group that was involved in overturning this. I just would like to ask, has Iowa State been approached and their expertise in agriculture and turf grass been used, and have they expressed their opinion? Got a great university here in the state of Iowa that is well known across the United States. It's one of the best turf grass colleges in the United States. And I don't think anybody has approached them, said anything about how they would like to do this. This makes no sense to me. I can guarantee you that contractors are behind this. All they want to do is to come in, scrape the land level, build their house, throw some sod on it, and run away. I live in one of those houses, believe me. I deal with that crap every year, okay? If I want green grass, I gotta water the hell out of it. I gotta put fertilizer on it. I gotta put chemicals on it. Believe me, it's no fun. So don't overturn this. It's stupid.
And next is Tim Ruth.
My name's Tim Ruth. I'm from Riverside, Iowa. I'm president of the Greater Iowa City Area Home Builders Association for 2015, and I'm second vice president of the State of Iowa Home Builders Association. Everyone thinks that home builders come in, strip the soil, sell it to the next guy so he can put it on his soil, make all this money, and then move on. Well, folks, you're all completely wrong, because I, as a home builder, go into a lot. I typically bring some soil in. The reason I bring it in is because maybe I don't have enough soil. Maybe I need fill material. I strip the soil. I do it the way it's supposed to be done. Today, when you look at the sale price of a house, the customer is more worried if there's granite countertops in the kitchen. They're more worried about the amenities that are put in the house. They're not worried about the yard. If it's green, that's all they care about. Because if I compete against all of the people I compete against each day of the week in the home building industry, the things I bring to the table that might make my house better than theirs might be items that increase the cost. And as Drew said, the cost of a house, for every $1,000 you raise it, you eliminate people from affordability. You can't keep adding costs to the house. I watch developments in the Iowa City area on a regular basis, and I see them strip the soil so they can put in the utilities. I watch them put in the utilities, put in the streets, put the soil back. Then we go in to build the house. What's the first thing we do? Strip the soil again. As someone who spent their entire life in the construction industry, and that is Al Streb, commented about an area in Iowa City. He said, hell, the ground's going to be wore out before they build anything because they keep moving dirt. And that's the truth. We look at it all, everybody thinks that there's something. But if you did the math, if you took the area of a lot or of an acre of ground, it's so simple to bring in 4 inches of topsoil. Do the math, it takes 700 ton of topsoil to cover an acre of ground at 4 inches thick. And that's an expense. So the reality of this is we need to support the rule as it's proposed, and don't paint us as home builders as bad people. We're not bad people. We're actually the people that have created a lot of the things. We're satisfying a need of a home buyer. And sometimes there are people out there that we are not proud of either. There are builders out there we're not proud of. But you know, a majority of the home builders out there today are really good and honest people. And yeah, there are occasionally dishonest people. But a lot of this can be attributed to cities, municipalities. Go drive by a streets project and see where the water's coming from and the mud. It's coming off of a lot of those properties because we do build silt fence. We do it right. So I just ask you very much to support this rules that's proposed. And you know, when you want to buy a house from somebody, buy it from a reputable builder that builds a good house and does things right, and you'll be fine. Thank you.
Next is Creighton Costa.
Thank you for the opportunity. I actually chaired the EO80 group and I worked with Joe in the original basis of this. I'll explain kind of things that went on. First, it should be recognized that what's being required by the federal rules, which is the EPA, and this change will not change any of these things. Controlling stormwater velocity and volume to minimize soil erosion, controlling stormwater discharges, provide and maintain natural buffers around waters of the United States, directing stormwater to vegetated areas and maximizing stormwater infiltration to reduce the pollutant discharges, minimizing soil compaction, and, unless infeasible, preserve topsoil. And what we did as a committee, we added language to the federal language that stated, you will not remove topsoil from the site. It's being used on site, it's being replaced on site, it is not being scraped and sold, it's not being moved off, it is being used on site and staying on site. Any of these issues where you don't have soil throughout the site would now be illegal. That is changed. This is a rule change. Second, it seems the general public may not be aware of many of the stormwater requirements currently imposed. The extensive use of silt fences, as you can see in any new development. Any development over 10 acres requires the use of detention basins designed to capture and slow that runoff to allow the settling of silt. To design, create, and manage effective drainage ways. Use of gravel and stone access drives to minimize track out. Daily street cleaning, cleaning of silt boxes and storm drains, use of erosion control socks to slow down the stormwater runoff, mandatory seeding of any disturbed development areas open more than 14 days. All of these requirements are mandated to be inspected every 7 days as long as that NPDES GP2 permit is in place. And additionally, developers are required to ensure post-development runoff controls do not exceed pre-development runoff calculations. In addition, builders and developers are providing parkland dedication and enhancement, creation of green space, maintenance and protection of established waterways, often through establishing riprap, and planting of trees and shrubs, use of bioswales, and creation of natural prairie areas. I'd like to touch on the economic impact of the costs that will be imposed to the home buyer. The stakeholder group agreed that the cost of the 4-inch requirement is between $3,500 and $6,000 per lot, depending on where and how large that is. According to the U.S. Census Bureau and National Association of Home Builders, and this has been mentioned, for every $1,000 increase to the cost of a home in Iowa, over 3,100 families can no longer afford that home. Throughout Iowa, using a figure of 3,500, this requirement eliminates nearly 11,000 families from purchasing that home. The economic impact in Iowa, based on the 2000 federal CSA data of 9,645 new homes, would be a cost to Iowa home buyers of over $38 million. Based on what I've heard and seen during the course of the EO80 committee meetings and recognizing the activities that have been both required and voluntarily undertaken by the builders and developers, as well as those that are being required within this rule as it's stated, the federal language is appropriate to place in the rule to replace the 4-inch requirement.
Next is Don Steichen.
I wasn't really here to give a speech tonight, but I'm an Iowa Water volunteer. I take that very serious. I'm also a contractor. I'm an electrician by trade, so I see a lot of buildings built. I see runoff and compaction issues, and even when they tore down the houses in Time Check, they had it in their language, a tillable layer of soil, of topsoil. So when they did it, they just scraped in a 1/2 inch to me, that's wrong. It's totally wrong. I can understand if there's not topsoil on the property. People know that when they buy it. I have no problem with that. It's when you skirt the rules and leave the definition open to whatever. I mean, when a person buys a property, they see green grass. I mean, if you don't have nothing underneath to support it, I mean, you get a hot year, your grass is gone. Contractors don't care, they're gone. They made their money, they move on. That owner owns that property. So I think it's very important. I like the rule the way it sits, so that's all I can say.
Next is John Burke.
Hi, I'm a resident of Cedar Rapids, not a home builder, homeowner. I'm opposed to the rule change. I think it's kind of short-sighted to reduce it for a number of reasons. I think that there's eventually, it's a cost shift to the property owner that gets
Could
it.
you speak up a little?
Can't hear you.
Okay. I think it's a cost shift to the property owner if they have to replace the soil to have enough to grow grass, or if you're a subsequent buyer of a lot that doesn't have enough dirt. And I also tend to look at it from a taxpayer standpoint. Every time that we have floods because we don't have enough water or enough topsoil to retain things, it increases insurance costs. And you can just look at the flood of 2008 to look at how damaging floods can be. So I'm thinking, one way or another, people are paying for it. I would prefer that it be dealt with correctly the first time through.
And now we have one person who put a question mark next to it. You want to make a comment. And that person is Janet Woods. Ms. Janet Woods, want to make a comment?
She doesn't know. I get it.
Okay. Now, did I leave anyone off who signed this? Or does anyone who didn't sign it want to make a comment?
You got more sheets in.
Got more sheets?
Yeah, because I signed something.
Did you? Maybe I didn't get it. Is there one of these sign-up sheets floating around still?
Craig did sign it, but I don't think he said that he wanted to speak, Craig.
Okay.
Am I up?
Come on up. We signed. Did you get your foot? You want to make a comment?
Ladies first.
I'll go ahead.
You sure?
You need to find our sheet. What's your name? Here. Go ahead.
Well, this is really neat. We have another issue that our politicians can politicize so that they can make decisions based on power, money, and votes instead of working together as fellow Americans, reasoning together, getting the best decisions for everybody and the environment. But we don't function at that level. We could be functioning at a higher level. And, you know, right here we could be doing that. We're kind of doing that. But if we politicize something and turn it into a political football and function the way all the rest of our government does, one side's going to win, the other side's going to lose, and we all lose. Now, I had 11 feet of highly contaminated water in my house of 30 years. So I ended up going to a lot of meetings with FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers, and the DNR. And I learned something, especially from these people that really care about God's creation. And that is, everything in creation is interdependent, codependent, and here for a reason. It all works together. Wouldn't you have loved to come to America when the settlers first saw it? The streams were filled with fish. I just would have loved to see 1,000,000 buffalo. I would have loved to have seen the carrier pigeon that when they flocked and flew over, it took all day just for that flock to go over. And then the settlers came, and what did we end up with? A dust bowl, and just tearing this country apart. Well, as I sit here, maybe the only way to solve this problem is that you can't build residential property on clay or sand. Maybe that's the only way to solve this problem. I do know, I have heard one thing that you can do if you have this problem now, is you can go and get free compost from the city, get a Scott's spreader, and every time you get a chance, spread compost on your yard, and slowly but surely, maybe 10, 20 years, it might help. One thing, and I do like the idea that the consumer, if there isn't 4 inches of topsoil, the person who's buying the home can help pay or just pay to bring it in. It's so simple. We just want water to go vertical, not horizontal. And then you know what happens? What does Mother Nature do when water goes vertical? It refines it. It cleans it as it goes through the layers of soil. That's how our great earth was designed to function. But, you know, we have a problem with least resistance. It's so easy to work with least resistance. And that kind of acts like water. It always seeks its own level. Well, what's happening to us, we're all seeking our own level of getting the most money out of everything, no matter what the repercussions are. Do you really like to buy furniture that's made out of pressed wood and it really looks good on the surface, but wait till it starts coming apart and you can't fix it? Does that bother you? I want real wood. I want the wood that our Creator created. Well, that's the way people feel when they find out what happened to their property. If it's just a cover-up job, we need to learn to give back to what we've been given. Or, you know, it could end up, this whole scenario of everybody taking, it could end up with an irreversible situation. It literally could end up that way. Maybe not, because I think God protects us in spite of ourselves. I have a lot that's about 135 by 85. It's all clay. I don't know how many times my wife has buried garbage in our garden so that something will grow. I brought in trailer load after trailer load of free compost. This phenomenal lot that is clay with a little bit of grass on top, I'm assessed $48,000 for that. $48,000. They ought to pay me for invigorating it. Do we always have to try to get the most money out of everything, no matter what the repercussions are? Is that the only way we can function? Is it all about existentialism, situational ethics, and values clarification, which our professors teach as they hide in our major universities? Because if you think it's right, and they want to change everything because they think they know better. Well, some things aren't right just because you think they're right. There's a bigger picture. We're here to take care of what we've been given. And you know, if we don't, I do believe in end times prophecy. It's going to get so bad that if it wasn't for the good Lord coming back and stopping it all, the Bible says that no flesh would be saved. We can go that far, and we don't have to. But that's end times prophecy. Just read Revelations. So there's a phenomena that's happening in our society, and we have to start working together to reverse it. And that's the cumulative effect of the ever-increasing cost of everything is going to reach critical mass. It's going to implode on itself, and nobody's going to be able to afford anything. Example being, go shop for your groceries. They think we don't know what's going on. The packaging looks exactly the same, but it's smaller. but the price keeps going up. They think we don't know that the packaging's smaller. What does this do? It's a manipulation. If this keeps going this route, we're going to double recycling because people need a certain volume of food. So they have to buy twice as much just to get it. What are they going to do with all the containers? Doubling recycling, what does that do? That puts more stress on the environment. There must be a lot of money being made in recycling or something. So we have a chance here to reason together. Let's take advantage of that chance. Am I done or what? Or are you just leaving? So I want to make sure that I got everything that I wanted to say. So maybe this group of people can show all our levels of government that it is possible to function at a higher level, reasoning together, getting the big picture instead of just thinking about narrow things. And you know, do you really love your relatives? Do you really love the next generation, your children? They're going to have to drink the water that we're doing what we're doing to it. And then the next generation and the next generation. And the trouble is, things seem to grow in one direction or the other. And they get either worse, more worse, or they can get better. Which direction are we going? Are we that blind? You know, we all have a heart. We all care. But we have such a stressful society and we have to make so much money all the time. Or do we? I don't know. We really have to question what we're doing to ourselves and to our environment. Just so politicians can stay in office. They want to keep us divided because every division, every controversy is another fundraiser for the politicians, the political parties, and the media. Do you really like to be used like that?
Are you for or against the rule change?
We have many people who want to speak.
I think we have a consensus here. Did you have your points?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Karen. Okay.
I'm Pat Nielsen, and I don't necessarily represent any group. I agree with a lot of the things that have been said here tonight, even some of the things that I've heard from contractors. The one word that I heard a man speak that I thought really made sense to me was the word stewardship. And I'm concerned about what we do, with the decisions we make that have an impact for our grandchildren and our children after that. My brother was a builder and a contractor in Des Moines. I'm not opposed to contractors, but I think we need to think very clearly about the decisions we make that affect our water quality, and that the decision to reduce a 4-inch top layer, which to me doesn't seem like much, is not a good decision. We need to make a decision that will ensure that we are lessening the degradation to the water quality that we have been doing in the last so many years. We are not improving our water quality, and I agree with you. I think people do care. If all of us had a chance to talk to each other and reach a decision in this room, we probably could do it. But we aren't the ones only who can do it. We just need to reinforce the idea that we are here to preserve the future, as well as what we're doing just in the next 5 or so years. So I agree with keeping at least 4-inch topsoil.
Karen.
My name is Karen Clark Hansen, and I live in Cedar Rapids. When my husband and I first moved back to Iowa, after an extended period of living away, we moved into the south side of Marion on South 22nd Street into a new construction house. It was a very nice house. It was very nicely built. First time I went out to do anything in the yard, I put a shovel in. The shovel went down about this far and it hit hard clay. And I thought, what the heck? And when it rained, there was a lake in the backyard that either evaporated or ran off into the street, but it didn't go into the dirt. And I then began looking around and I realized, but I didn't know, because I just hadn't been paying attention, I didn't live in the area, was that all the lots around there had been scraped clean. And I don't think there was anything close to 4 inches put back. Now, the rule as it's proposed would, or as it stands right now with the 4 inches says that if you get there and there's no topsoil there, you don't have to put 4 inches there. But I think they should. If you go down 31st Street in Marion, on the east side of the road, the bank is this high, and where they're developing on the east side, there's quite a difference in the level. That tells you how much topsoil has been taken away. A lot. Our solution was, after living in the south side of Marion, which was a nice place, I started looking for another place to live, and I had a long list of things that I wanted. The first filter was it was going to be in an older neighborhood. There was no consideration of new construction because there wasn't going to be any dirt there. I'm not a master gardener, far from it. We ended up buying a house in Cedar Rapids. It was built in 1950, had lots of dirt. Things I plant grow there. It's not because I'm a better gardener, it's because the soil is better. And I think that at a minimum, there should be the 4 inches. There was a question that I had, was prompted by a remark that wanted to know where the 4-inch rule came from. And my understanding is that when it was initially developed, it was in consultation with developers and builders. So that 4 inches came from developers and builders. And then they decided, I guess, that they didn't like it. The other observation I have is that the dollar amount for how much it would cost to bring the soil back was now cited as $3,500 to $6,000. In fall of 2013, the Des Moines Register said it was cited a source that said it was $1,200. And last May, in a Todd Dorman column, it was cited as being $2,500 to $5,000. So it keeps getting higher and higher. And I don't believe that number that's up to 6,000. I think that the rule should be kept in place for all the reasons that people talked about here tonight. I think that to take it away would really hurt a lot of the environment. Thanks.
Now, anyone else raise their hand and want to make a comment? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barb, and I live in Cedar Rapids. I guess I could be called an environmentalist. I agree with the 4 inches where we are at now and not changing that. I think we have to have sustainability with our environment, and I think that Iowa in general has not done that forever. And so I think that's prime importance. It always seems to be about the dollar amount, and I'm tired of hearing about the dollar amount. I'm worried about our planet and our earth that we have, that we love in Iowa so much for what we do grow and what we can do with that. So that's where I stand with it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Now you get stuck with me. I hadn't planned to come and speak, so these are my notes. You'll have to forgive me. The first thing I'd like to say is the evil contractor. I need to tell you, my name's Lucy Hirschberger. I've been in the landscaping industry for 33 years, okay? Been doing this a long time. I know the difference between topsoil and sand and clay. I've been told I don't. Contractors aren't trying to, pardon the expression, screw people, but they're trying to protect their interests. Unfortunately, a lot of the information we're getting is misleading, okay? I can say that because I was also on the EO80 stakeholders group. I worked very hard to preserve the rule. I believe it's important. I've been working with stormwater management issues for almost between 10 and 15 years. My father's house was flooded in '08 and in '93. My kids' houses were flooded in the heavy rains a few years ago in North Liberty. So I know what the consequences of not taking care of the soil are. The problem is
there's an unwillingness on the part of the Home Builders Association and the builders to compromise. When we spoke at the meetings about, and I wasn't going to speak until I heard you say that we were in agreement. And there was not an agreement, and I feel like you should have, that was very misleading. I feel like the information that was presented to the Environmental Protection Commission was misleading. It was almost word for word the position of the Home Builders Association. And that was Mr. Cox that was presenting that information. The other two people on the stakeholders group, Pat Sauer and I, who did not believe the rule should be repealed, worked very hard to find a compromise. Every time we would offer a compromise that would reduce the burden on the home builders, because the burden is because it's hard to get exactly 4 inches. And I agree with that. We need topsoil. We need it for stormwater management as well as for happy homeowners. But the rule is created for stormwater management. Because if we don't have that topsoil, when the water runs off the roof, it runs down in the storm drains, causes pollution and flooding. That's not debatable. Whether it's 3 inches or 4 inches, 5 inches or 6 inches doesn't really matter as much as something that will allow that water to be held and percolate down into the soil. When we talked about a volume measurement, the comment that was made was absolutely no measurable standard. The Home Builders Association will not accept a measurable standard. When we're on a committee where there's 4 builders represented and 2 opposing people, and it ends up being a vote, it will be voted down. When the chairman of the committee is a lobbyist for the Home Builders Association, that's the view that will be presented. And I guess I learned a lot about politics in this group. I learned a lot. I tried to be compromising and find a good solution because I feel like there is a compromise. There's a way this rule could work without costing $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. What we need is another stakeholders group that's made up of all the stakeholders, not 4 builders and 2 other people. It should truly be the stakeholders of Iowa, home builders, environmental groups, contractors, developers, people who understand the importance of the rule and understand the consequences of the rule. And I think if that happens, there will be a good compromise that everybody can live with. But the key is going to be compromise, not only our way or nothing. Thanks for listening.
We have a gentleman with his hand up there.
Can I ask a stupid question? Who appointed this commission?
Well, right now, we're just taking comments from the public.
No, I'm serious. I want to know who appointed these 6 people.
After the hearing's over, we can shut off everything, and then if anyone wants to ask me questions, then we can do that, but not in this hearing form.
Why is that so hard to say?
Well, because right now we're just soliciting comments. And your question is a comment, but right now I can't really answer that because we're in a hearing right now, okay? So you can approach me later. There's a hand up over here.
No, you can't.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Okay, you want to make a comment?
Yeah.
Okay, come on up. Okay.
Jean Kirby, Cedar Rapids resident, homeowner. What we need for life is air, water, food. Those are the basics. And water is a truly very important aspect of that for humans and everybody else. We have to take care of our water. I agree that the 4 inches needs to be kept, and that's my comment.
Can I ask a question? How come the term black dirt is not used anymore? I hear topsoil, I hear clay, I hear sand. I've lived in Iowa all my life, and all I've ever heard the term is black dirt. Can you tell me what black dirt is?
Well, we can address that again after the hearing.
I'd be happy to address that.
And Lucy with Forever Green said she'd be happy to address that. Anyone else want to make a comment? Stacy has her hand up.
My name is Stacy Johnson, and I'm a resident of Cedar Rapids. I want to address Mr. Rush. These rules weren't made for the people that do it right. They're made for the people that want to leave a compacted clay subsoil behind. And the rule is if there's 4 inches there, 4 inches need to be returned. If it's 0 inches there, nothing has to be returned. So in terms of the cost, what you're doing is, it's more of a, strip, stockpile, and respread. That's the cost involved with this. It's not bringing in 4 inches of topsoil from off-site. The rule was written in October of 2012. A lot of home builders so far have not been issued permits under the new rules. If you go to Joe's website, the NPDS permits, a lot of home builders are still working on permits that have been issued prior to October of 2012, where costs haven't really been, I think, averaged yet. Talking with one of the larger home builders in Cedar Rapids, he says that as long as I know what I have to plan for, the costs aren't the $3,500 to $6,000. It was more $400 to $1,000 per lot. So in terms of housing affordability, you're passing the costs off to the people that are buying the properties. It might not be in the loan, but there's a lot of costs involved with trying to get organic matter back into the soil so it functions and grows things. And in terms of Drew, I'm sorry for picking on you, Drew, but topsoil is not potting soil. Compacted clay is not topsoil. And if you go to every single lot, most lots in Cedar Rapids, you'll see compacted clay is what's being left behind, and that's just wrong for the people buying the property. So I think that it should stand, or as Lucy says, at least find a good compromise that addresses these issues from the home buyer's perspective, and then your issues with the home building industry. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to make a comment?
Are you taking phone comments?
Yes. I was just going to get, my answer to the gentleman's question who asked, can he make another comment, is first we'll ask folks on the phone. Okay? Yes, go ahead, ma'am. And if you want to state your name.
Is that me? Is that me you're talking to? I want to make
Yes,
sure.
it is. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for taking my call. I've been listening intently to all the comments, and I've really enjoyed learning from the different perspectives. I am calling from Decorah, Iowa. Could not make it down there tonight. I want to share my perspective. We are farmers. I'm also a scientist, an educator, a water quality researcher in both ag and urban watersheds over the last 5 years. And I'm also on the planning committee for the Iowa Water Conference. I've also spent the last 6 months interviewing both ag and urban residents about their thoughts about water. And what's very clear to me is that people feel, and it's reflected in your meeting tonight, very strongly about water. And I want to try to make several points. One is that I think it's complements some of the earlier comments, a change in mentality in terms of our approach towards water. And it's not unique to the urban, it's in the ag, urban, and public mindset, that this realization that our own success, the success of humans, is not dependent on our abilities to control or dominate our environment, but rather on our ability to harmonize with it and see ourselves as a part. And this topsoil requirement of 4 inches, which I support maintaining, that's a beautiful example of, if it previously had that level of coverage, then restore that level of coverage after we humans have disturbed it and developed that area, so that those critical functions provided by that soil can still occur. And many people have spoken to those really important functions, so I won't reiterate that. But a lot of the focus has been on cost, and I think the answer is it's going to cost something. And the cost that I've heard repeatedly and which I agree have grown over the months from the homeowner and building associations. What's reported in the document to the EPC from the group is range of several hundred to several thousand, and that keeps going up, although in some areas of the state, including the Quad Cities, there were developers that said, we're managing this, and it's not really costing us more. So I don't think it's universal. But what I would like to see the EPC address is, let's hear somebody researching about the costs of not doing it. What are the long-term costs for a homeowner of a functional lawn? What are the long-term costs of not helping to mitigate and prevent flooding? And what are the long-term costs of drinkable water, drinkable, swimmable water for both humans and other life? So that's not at all in any of the paperwork that I've seen, and really hasn't been part of the equation. And I really appreciate the homeowner or home builders and developers comments tonight, and those that I've read. I mean, they illustrate that the problem is complex, that there's a range of costs, but I also think that some of their statements reflect precisely why this rule should stay in place. And that is when we hear people talking about, well, it locks people out of buying homes, or what they really care about is the granite cabinet top and not, and having a green lawn, but it doesn't matter more than that. We need to question whether we should have people who are buying homes that are choosing that granite countertop, which that choice isn't going to affect anyone else, whether they have that or not besides them, or at the expense of, along with topsoil or not, which is going to affect other people downstream. And if we can't build a house because we can't make that choice, or then maybe it's okay to say, okay, maybe we can't build a house if we can't afford to protect that water. And I extend that same sentiment to the agricultural community. I mean, if we can't farm without desecrating our water, then maybe we can't farm the way we're farming. Or maybe it will mean some people can't farm. But what I find interesting in the comments, both that I've heard tonight and that I've read, are that the major negative reaction to this, to the 4-inch rule, is coming from builders and developers and realtors, and the major support for it is coming from homeowners, people and organizations for environmental stewardship, soil and water quality, and municipalities. And it is the latter who the homeowners and everybody else acknowledge that they're going to bear those costs. So I'm trying to figure out what the problem is, actually, because the people who are going to bear the costs are saying, please maintain this. And so I think that's something that we need to think about. And then it comes around to my final point, which is thinking about who the stakeholders were on this committee. The very vocal voices, and we just heard from someone who was on the committee who shared the full experience of the 4 builder-developer stakeholders always being able to outvote the other 2 stakeholders, but there were so many that were missing. There were not homeowners. There was no municipality representation, even though many applied to be on it. Soil and water conservation groups, soil and water scientists, those that face downstream water quality and quantity consequences, they are not represented. And so after realizing this, I decided, well, I want to go, so this is now going to the EPC, and so I thought, well, maybe they can have that representation there. So I spent some time today going through in detail the membership of the Environmental Protection Committee, and there are commission, and there are 9 members. 8 of those members own farms or have major and direct financial stakes in the agricultural industry. And that includes a whole realm of things: ag construction, fertilizer manager for a 20-year manager for Monsanto, past president of Iowa Pork. There's one person out of 9 that is in an industry other than ag. And I was beside myself, absolutely beside myself, and I still am. And I don't doubt that these people are good folks who care about the environment and want to do good things. I know some of them personally and have worked with them. But for something that's called the Environmental Protection Commission, to have 8 out of the 9 with direct and integral financial ties to the ag industry or agribusiness, which is, has been highlighted, and I'm a farmer, so I think they need some representation, but the ag industry is really contributing much more of the pollution. But to have all that representation from such a narrow group of stakeholders, and none from scientists, soil and water conservation groups, municipalities, homeowners, I am absolutely beside myself. I can't, it's not a gray question about whether it's right or wrong. It's black and white. It is so wrong to have these two groups so completely slanted with such a narrowly focused group of what are called stakeholders. It's just unethical for the many other people who are all stakeholders in our soil and water quality to not be represented here. So I'll end my comments with a plea, an absolute plea to the EPC Commission to do their absolute best to represent all these other stakeholders who have not yet had a voice on any committee. I'll end my comments there.
All right. Is there anyone else out there on the phone who'd like to make a comment? All right. Now, is there anyone else here who wants to make a comment? Or maybe a second comment? Yes.
Jim Sadler, I'm in Cedar Rapids. I sat here tonight trying to make heads and tails of what I'm listening to, and I guess if you're truly a naturalist, you'd say...
Can you speak up?
I think
You're competing with a compressor over here.
Oh, if you guys would come closer, there's a lot of seats here, but you hear easier. But
I guess
to me, we're all standing on soil, and we can all see soil, and other than this cement that man placed here, if you're truly a naturalist, you'd say we ought to work with the soil that God put on that land that we're working on. The only thing I'm coming from on this is it seems like people are saying we should go take somebody else's black soil and bring it to my land so that I have better soil to grow grass on, and that doesn't seem to make sense to me. I guess I look at it and say if you've got soil on this land you own, you ought to keep it there. And I don't understand why I should go get ground dirt from some other place and bring it to this land. So it sounds like people are complaining that their grass doesn't grow as well than some other place. Well, I guess to truck in dirt to another place doesn't make sense to me. So the only thing I can assume is that the builders are fearful that someone is going to interpret a regulation that they've got to haul in more black soil to the land that they're developing. And it sounds to me like the consumers are mad because their grass doesn't grow very well. So that's what I took from this, and that's the only, I don't see any logic in this discussion, I guess. If you try to keep what's there, that makes sense, but to truck in dirt, just ecologically, it doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, let's not debate.
And Joe, could you read the change or the original one? Did it state that they had to bring, if there's no dirt on the lot, you have to bring in dirt?
Let's just hold that
Okay,
until...
that's a yes, thank you.
I have one. Okay, now is there anyone else who wants to make the first comment? Anyone? Okay, Mr. gentleman's chomping at the
I
bit.
just don't want to, it kind of seems like, I appreciate what the gentleman's saying, but it kind of sounds to me like we're interested in his belt than his stewardship.
Speak up.
I'm trying to figure out how, if your property doesn't have any topsoil on it to begin with, how are you issued a permit to build on it if you're required to have topsoil on it? Does that come from the planning commission? I mean, I don't understand why they issue permits to build houses on land that doesn't have topsoil. It sounds to me like that's the argument.
Yes, sir. Can you
I'll make it
short?
real short.
All right.
It's good to have variety. For Mr. Sattler, who is a real nice guy, I will say again why this meeting is here. We want to make this and please don't leave. We want to make the land permeable so that the water will sit there and get absorbed into the land so that it can penetrate through the different layers, which will cleanse it and make it drinkable again. That's what we're trying to say. So he left. What do? So it's that simple. Clean our water so we can drink it again. That's the whole purpose. Slow down the water from going horizontal, get it to go vertical, and then the layers of dirt will clean it. That's what it's all about.
Okay, folks, one last call for comments. Anyone? Okay, then. I'll stick around as long as anyone wants, if anyone has questions about the current requirement, the proposed requirement, or the rulemaking process.
Joe, can we have questions in open
Yeah.
form so
Yeah,
that we all
please.
can hear the questions and answers?
Please.
Sure.
Could you answer my question about the black dirt?
Oh,
Lucy's the expert here. Go ahead, Lucy.
technically, black dirt would be dirt that's black, and you can actually have clay that's black.
Exactly.
Which is why we no longer use that term.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a slang
It's
term.
used for fill though, for our foundation.
Oh, yeah, it's used all, it has, and it has good use in a development because it will compact where topsoil won't. Or technically, good dirt with high in organic matter, which is really what we're talking about when we talk about topsoil. So, that's the difference. We used to call it black dirt all the time, but we're not allowed to.
Joe, could you speak to Brad's point about clarifying the rule? A lot of the home builders were talking about hauling in, which is not what I understood.
Right, the current requirement is that however much topsoil was there before construction, before that permitted activity started, they have to leave up to 4 inches or more. So a couple of examples. Let's say none was there. Recently, one of the metro area cities called me, and the developer called me separately saying, hey, what are we supposed to do here? They had, believe it or not, an old, I think it was a coal mining site, or they thought it might have been. It was basically no topsoil there. The answer is, they don't have to leave anything. And that's hard luck for future homeowners, but that's the way it is. The rule is not intended to force folks to improve the conditions. Now let's say there are 2 inches. That's how much they'd have to leave, is 2 inches or more. Now if there was, say, 2 feet, they'd have to leave 4 inches or more. So they shouldn't have to truck in any. Now we have to keep in mind that whenever you move soil, you'll lose some. Okay? So when they strip the topsoil, they're going to lose a little bit. At the same time, even in a residential subdivision, somewhere between typically 1/4 and 1/2, and builders, correct me if I'm wrong here, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of what you have is going to be impervious when you're done with the development. So the topsoil from that footprint is going to be available, or at least a fraction of it's going to be available for respread. And that might make up for some of the loss. I don't know, I'm not an expert. So, yeah, they shouldn't have to truck in any. If they lose a whole lot, they might end up having to do that, but hopefully they would. That's not the intent, certainly, of the requirement. Yes, sir.
Let's say that we kept the present rule can a city adopt a more stringent requirement than the one that the state will have adopted? For example, could Cedar Rapids say, not only must you leave at least 4 inches of soil, but if you want to build on land that is clay, essentially clay, then you have to improve the site so that we don't suffer from the runoff and the other pollution that will be contributed because it's built on clay. So could the city make such a requirement?
As far as the department is concerned, yes. Now, a downtown attorney made the argument to me that legally, that may not be the case. And he gave me some reason, I don't really recall what it is, but the department doesn't care about that. As far as we're concerned, then yes, the cities could.
Actually, that's already starting to happen. They're going one step above, and I just got the email 2 or 3 days ago. I think that's part of the pushback from the building community is once you start raising the bar starts raising itself through different communities, and Cedar Rapids is obviously one as like silt plant, silt sock. We were a leader in doing it in 1998. Now there's expectations of actually encircling a whole lot when the EPA rule says you don't have to do that. So all of a sudden we're getting put to a higher bar because they feel that it's a better situation for the community. And in some cases it's total overkill.
Silt sock on the uphill side of the street.
Yeah. Or example, we put in $6,000 worth of silt sock 2 weeks ago. We didn't have utilities in. We tried to tell the city, why are we putting in silt sock in the middle of winter with no utilities in? They're going to ruin it. I took pictures 2 weeks later and I said, here to our city, the people that inspect it, I blew $6,000 because the utilities came in. That's what I think our pushback is once you start giving the municipalities interpretation, they can raise the bar on you.
So would it not be more practical to have a statewide regulation so it is universal?
It's when you start.
Because my concern is, I can tell you, again, we work in Corville.
By the way, I will tell you, I appreciate your views.
Thank you. Corville has a regulation. North Liberty's working on a regulation. Solon is discussing one. Iowa City, I'm sure, will do something. Cedar Rapids will do something. And what you're going to end up with is a situation where everybody has a different regulation. Wouldn't that be more difficult for a builder who doesn't work just in one community? Because I'm thinking, occasionally we're called on to meet these regulations, and from a practicality standpoint, it would seem to me that a statewide regulation, and I know the cities, and I worked with Corville and their regulation on the committee that wrote that. And I know that they will overwrite if they have that opportunity because they're very concerned about the issues. But what really makes a difference is if North Liberty doesn't have anything, it's Corville that's affected. And isn't there potential for the communities to start vying for, if it's a $5,000 expense, well, one community could not have a regulation, the one downstream could, and then the development's going to go upstream, making the problem worse, but also costing builders. I mean, if you've got lots in one community and not in another, it's an unfair playing field without a universal regulation.
What you're talking about, though, is home rule, and irregardless what the state adopts, any community can choose and will raise the bar. We have the same issue with all the building codes that we deal with. The advantage we have is we try to sit down in Cedar Rapids, and I know the Iowa City market does it too, and the Des Moines market does it too. They try to sit down with all the code officials in the municipality and get as much as they can similar, so there isn't the confusion you're talking about. But you're never, as long as we're a home rule state, you're never going to get a statewide standard that is just the standard any place, because we always have communities that have different people that feel more important about things than other communities do.
So better to just say the cities regulate and hope you can build in a city with no regulation?
No, we compete against municipalities all the time. For instance, Marion up here grows for its size a much faster rate than Cedar Rapids does, because it's a more friendly community, and it's a neighborhood community than Cedar Rapids is. So there's always a natural competition, and that's what we're asking for, really, is a natural competition to be able to take place among builders and among municipalities, among communities.
Should potential buyers begin to look at it, and if they're looking at building a home, or look at the contractor and say, give me your offer on the soil. What are you gonna do with that, and how much are you gonna charge me? And we're gonna make that a separate issue. So just don't price me a house that includes the property.
And that can be something, and you look in this room, we're all bald and gray. There's none of the young people here. They don't care about that.
No, it's not that they don't care.
You don't know
They
whether
don't
they do
know.
or
Well,
not.
they don't be here though.
They don't know about it.
They don't know until they buy the house.
Right.
Trust me,
Exactly.
I-
Exactly.
we deal with it. This is why, one of the reasons I got involved. And I can tell you the other cost that the government, we are paying, and I live on a farm, guys, so, you know, I don't have to, I got 4 feet of topsoil. Sorry. But
Jim would like to buy some.
I got a stockpile too, but we're not talking about where that came from.
The temporary seed.
I'm sorry. The price isn't just to the homeowner, it's to the people downstream. Because like I said, my children live in North Liberty, and North Liberty developed very quickly. It doesn't have anywhere for the water to go. And my daughter's house, the basement floods because the storm sewers can't handle the volume of runoff from impervious surface, which includes everything, not just yards. But in North Liberty, it's a huge problem. So she's paying that price when her house floods for somebody else saving $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 or whatever number we come up with on their lot. The government is paying my company. That's what I was actually going to get up and talk about. We do something called soil quality restoration, where we aerate soil and spread compost to help that soil to absorb rainwater. That costs $1,000 on an average lot. Many of the municipalities pay for half that cost with my tax dollars. So I'm subsidizing a home buyer so they don't have to pay to do what's right. And that's not right either.
And I'm talking from a builder standpoint. I've read, there's a book out there, Hot, Flat, and Crowded. It's a wonderful book by the same author who wrote The World is Flat. And if you really want to get into all of these, the global warming gig and all that, it's a wonderful book. The problem that I'm asking is, you're all here, and I can't get homeowners to water their trees for the summer.
Oh, my God.
And then they expect me to replace it. And
Exactly.
when you start asking government to start telling us what to do, they up the bar. And I would just ask them, the good builders are going to do the right thing. You're absolutely 110% right. And the poor ones, and we do have a percentage possibly that are there, they need to be regulated. But I think when you start putting numbers on it, municipalities get a little too pumped up.
How else do you have rules without numbers? If you don't have a number, if you say you have to put topsoil back, how can you say you have to put, how can you not say a number?
Maybe
There
it's
has
part
to
of
be a
our,
number.
maybe it's part of the situation of being creative and rewording it. Like a 4-inch dig, it's really hard. It's going to be very hard to adapt to it, and very hard to enforce it fairly.
And it's gonna be very easy for you to just kind of.
No, I use
But
all
it
my
could
black
be-
dirt.
it
I
could
use all my black
easily-
dirt on
It could
site.
easily be a volume measurement. You could say if 4 inches across a yard is 50 cubic yards, that yard has to have 50 cubic yards. It can be 2 inches in front and 6 inches in back.
But again, the problem is you're coming up with a number, and I'm not picking on you.
No, you're okay.
but-
We're discussing. We're
But
openly
the
discussing.
homeowners do not want to be told the number. They do not want to have somebody tell them what they have to do. That's
Homeowners?
the problem.
The builders.
No, the builders.
The builders.
do not want
Exactly,
that.
and honestly, and that was the discussion on the committee. We agreed that topsoil was important, we agreed it matters for stormwater quality, we agreed that homeowners want that topsoil, but as long as they don't have to meet a standard. No measurable standard.
The regulatory concept is not really appreciated.
I understand that. But without regulation, I can show you what you're gonna end up with.
Okay, so, and when we talk about the young people not caring, I built a home last year, it was my parade home. We hauled in 25 loads of black dirt because our lot was low. The soil was black to start with. We hauled in more, we backfilled, we tilled it. We did everything we possibly could do to make it as sweet as could be. We fertilized it. We bought sod from a unique place to buy sod because we wanted nice sod. We watered it. We closed on the lot. That's the last time the lot was watered.
And that's
That was
gonna
the last
happen.
time it was fertilized. That was the last time. Now it looks absolutely like crap. Okay, what do we have? A homeowner that didn't care, and I did what was right. The guy everybody else drives by and they say, boy, that yard looks like shit. And yeah, I'm at fault, but it's not my fault.
The good news is that yard will absorb rainwater.
Well, sure it will. It's
I
sitting
mean,
on sand.
But you know, you could say the same thing, they didn't clean the dryer vent in their dryer and their dryer broke down. I mean, there's always, that's the same thing you're
Yes,
saying.
but everybody thinks this topsoil's gonna solve everybody's problem. Topsoil's not gonna, I own a lot on top of a hill. There is not 1 ounce of topsoil on that lot. And what am I gonna do? I'm gonna put all the dirt back.
So your solution is nothing?
My solution is, I'm a builder that does it right. My solution is, we'll do other things. We'll amend the soil. We will take care of it. But we're not all bad people. We get painted as bad people. We're not.
So if
We're not. We don't all have private jets.
And I think it does a disservice when people say contractors don't care. And I'll tell you, I have had contractors say to clients that we were talking about putting topsoil down, say to them, you don't need topsoil, it's a waste of money. And the homeowner was furious and told us about it. But, I mean, there's good and bad, and there's homeowners who don't water it. I have raised 2 kids, and they're good kids now, but when they were teenagers, they had a few moments, let's just say. And I used to tell my kids, don't compare yourself to the lowest common denominator. If it's all we look at is the homeowner that's a problem, the worst builder, we're never gonna solve the problem. You know, we could always say there's somebody who's never gonna do it right, but that's not what we're really, that's not gonna solve the problem. What we need to say is, how can we solve the problem? And as long as we're looking for an excuse why it won't work, I guess you'll get what you want, nothing will happen.
Well, I agree with you. I don't need to be legislated to do the right thing. I live on Beverly Road. Beverly Road washed out, and it wasn't my development that did it. It was the 60 acres to the north that ran through that creek. So, I mean, there's my thing is, I don't need to be regulated to do it right, and there's other people that are in another industry that aren't doing it right, and they're not regulated.
I got a question. If you're doing it right, why are you so upset with the regulations?
I don't like to be
Exactly.
regulated.
Exactly. I don't like to be regulated.
We're regulated,
but
we're regulated with this.
I have to live with it every day. Every day I go to work, my boss regulates what I do.
My conscience regulates.
Good.
And my point is, I don't need someone from the city coming out and saying, you need to pay for this. Now, if they'll pay for it, I'll do it.
Everything you do is already regulated. And we do that for health and for safety. We have electrical codes, we have sewer codes, everything. This is really a
Being
minor
regulated
compared to all that.
by
It's
the,
a
by
very
the man, by
I
Mr. Griffin over there.
I went into a house that had 48%
He regulates us, we're being regulated.
I went
Everywhere.
into a house that had 48% humidity the other day. I looked at the homeowner and I go, why are you humidifying your house at 48%? Maybe that's why your windows are sweating and you got mold. It's the homeowner that won't do certain things as an example. I'm giving that as an example. But I don't think we need to be regulated by a number. I think, Ms. Hirschberger, what you're saying, there might be a compromise, but when you start saying 4 inches, it's pretty heavy.
Yes, sir.
You know,
Why
she
should
says you
I
tried to
have to
compromise,
rely
because
on
they
your
go
good
through.
intentions?
Exactly. When you drive home tonight, are you regulated by any numbers? Go out on 380 and see if you're regulated. Well, for at least for another 30
Cameras
days.
are there.
Cameras are there, they're watching.
You know, you might not need to be regulated, but obviously there's contractors that do. There's several of us homeowners here that are paying for those contractors.
If you guys are doing it right, you shouldn't worry about the rule.
It's the people that are regulating us that push it up.
Wait till they enforce.
We're home rule. Cedar Rapids.
I built a house in North Liberty.
Home
where
rule
I had to
means
seed a
that
yard before
the counties
I
or
could
cities can
close
do
up a
something
house.
unless
I
the
could seed
state
yard next door, we disturbed
prohibits
it.
it. So the state
In
can
the
prohibit
meantime, I
them
had to take the
from having
stakes
more
out
than 4
because
inches.
they were digging the basement. But they would not give me an occupancy permit. I restored the lot next door. That's the regulations we as builders are gonna face. Way above and beyond what's needed. I don't disagree with needing something, but we don't need all the regulations.
We have some folks that are begging to say something, they keep raising their hands.
I would just like to apologize for the question that gentleman put in. So, hear about who appointed the committee and the commission, were they appointed? Like, how did that?
The way we did it, the department publicly solicited folks to volunteer. From that list, between the department and the governor's office, the members were chosen. I'm not privy to all the discussions that took place to choose them.
I can say that my mama didn't raise any fool. I looked at that list and immediately knew that it was set up. There was no,
Because so many of them are all from the same faith, and that's not cross whatever. Why didn't they have more people from different walks of life on that committee?
So since that was brought up, can that be fixed? In the next commission, if there is one, be better, like he suggested? And the person on the telephone?
Well, that would be a comment
We
you
don't-
could
we don't
make.
like that.
That would be a comment you could make, and you all have my email address. Certainly, if you want to send me that, then we would have to respond to that and respond in the summer.
I do have a question about that though. If there was a new stakeholders group formed, would the same people who chose the members for this stakeholders group choose that one?
Well, difficult to say. Remember, the commission is the entity who makes a decision on the rules. Okay, they're the first one up. The Administrative Rules Review Committee, they can weigh in on it too. I'm not sure in exactly what way. But the commission can tell the department, form another stakeholder group. The governor's office could tell the department, form another stakeholder group. The department really has a little say in the matter. They're our bosses. That's who determines what we do. Yes, sir?
May I suggest that everybody contact their state legislators and have some pressure put to bear to the builders from our state legislators? So maybe there's another, that they can answer to them where they don't have to really want to answer to the property owner. So contact your legislator. Give them your feeling and your opinion.
Gentleman over here.
I just was curious, I don't know if I heard the answer to this, but how did the members of the commission get on the commission? Were they appointed by?
The governor appoints them, and the
All
Senate
appointed
confirms.
by the governor?
And we applied. I mean, I don't know how everybody else got on it, but I
Sure,
sent a
there's a
letter
lot of
in.
applicants.
I had somebody who told me about it and explained what was going on, and I sent a letter in requesting so you had to actually ask to be on the commission. I assume.
You're asking two different groups. The way Joe responded, that's the EPC commission. They're nominated by the governor, approved by the Senate. The EO 80 group is between the governor and the director of the DNR. It is not politically approved by the Senate or the House.
Right, and then that's who I was responding to. That yes, sir?
Yeah, there are other states that have done this kind of rule with the foreign topsoil and had their success and failures, or?
I checked on the surrounding states before we came up with 4-inch. No, it was after. And all but Nebraska had adopted EPA's language verbatim. Nebraska just hasn't gotten around to it yet. Interestingly enough, Minnesota, my contact up there told me that they almost adopted the 4-inch after we had. Of course, almost isn't good enough. Doesn't do us any good or harm. So basically, they're doing EPA's, what we're going through, all the surrounding states except Nebraska. Maybe they have by now. Anyone have anything else? You want to argue about, or ask, or complain about?
I got a good question for you, Joe. Who's going to win the NCAA double A?
Thank you.